Well, hello, everyone. This is Bob Ferguson. I am a Shaklee Senior Master Coordinator, and tonight it's my delight to have my good friend and colleague, Dr. Bruce Daggy, with us. Bruce has had a lot of very illustrious positions, scientific positions in corporations like GlaxoSmithKline. But we got to know each other when he was the Chief Scientific Officer for Shaklee. We found that we had a lot of common interests, including in sustainability. I've asked Bruce to come on with us. He's retired from Shaklee now, but is still a great friend of all of us. Asked him to come on and talk about Shaklee cleaners and the whole idea of non-toxic cleaners. So we're going to put that in a bigger context, though, before we talk specifically about why you want to really make sure you got the right cleaners, or more specifically, not the wrong cleaners under your sink, and how that relates to Shaklee's entire product development philosophy. Then we'll get into the details of why you want to be really careful in the cleaning arena. So Bruce, thanks so much for being with me.
My pleasure, Bob. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure. When it comes to product development, companies genuinely have different philosophies as to how to do it, as well as having different levels of capability. And so, there's a question of once you've decided on a formulation, how are you going to determine who your ingredient suppliers should be, and the manufacturing site, and all those kind of questions. But before you get to that, when you're actually talking about the formulation, what, if anything, are you not going to use? How are you going to set the specifications for what you are going to use? And again, some companies really don't have the expertise. The company could just be basically a shell, a marketing group where they pick up the phone and they call somebody and they say, make us this supplement, or make us a supplement we could sell, or they might not know anything. And the same thing with cleaning products. They might not know anything, or they may have some expertise, or they may even have a lot of expertise, but have a different philosophy as to what the product should be. Whether it's a smoke and mirrors product in terms of a dietary supplement that really is not meaningful, but it's trendy, or how safe the cleaning product is, just as an example. So we're going to talk about cleaning products tonight, which is not what I normally do, frankly. I'm a PhD nutritionist. I'm really kind of on that side of healthcare. But obviously, cleaning products do have something to do with healthcare, right? Hard surface cleaners and other kind of cleaners are also important for our health, ideally in the positive way, but could be important to our health in terms of things that you might not want those products to do. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So going to talk about how to enjoy a healthy home by the choice of what cleaning products to use. This image that I have on the first slide, this was in the window of a dry cleaner that was near my house in California, and I thought it wasn't the best example of marketing. but,
Oh boy!
But they were trying to say, we're being careful on your behalf. So there you go. So in healthcare, we talk a lot about nature versus nurture. What drives outcomes? Why do some people stay healthy? Why do some people get sick? How much of that is determined by your genes? How much of it is determined by what you're exposed to? Now, again, with my nutrition hat on, I talk a lot about the importance of what you put in your mouth every day. So we know full well that in the field of nutrition, your environmental exposures, what you're putting in your mouth, really matters a lot to your long-term health, and sometimes even to your short-term health. Well, the same is true for other things that you might inhale accidentally or on purpose. things that you might put on your skin or get on your skin. So these are the sort of things that we concern ourselves with when we're thinking about cleaning products. And we're living in a world where there are a lot of environmental exposures to things that we don't necessarily want to be exposed to. And this can be particularly critical for children because children are growing. Their intestinal system, their GI tract, is not as discriminating because it's in the business of absorbing as much as it can, and your cells are dividing. These are growing organisms. So children, for example, lead is much more hazardous because they're going to absorb more of it than an adult would. So we humans, through our industrial activities, have used lead in pipes and in paint and in gasoline and many other things. So we put a lot of lead in the environment. Pesticides, there's smog from cars and trucks. Fire retardants are a big issue now with the contamination of our water supply. Secondhand smoke, in indoor air quality issues from tobacco, industrial chemicals, and household cleaners. So all these things, are potential risks and many of them risks when you're at home. And I want to give a story from my young adulthood. I started to develop bad respiratory allergies when I was, I guess, in my late teens or 20s. And back in those days, I ended up going to see my doctor, and my doctor prescribed various medications, antihistamines and decongestants and whatnot. And my allergies kept getting worse, and the doctor kept writing prescriptions for stronger medications until when I was about 32 or so. I took one of those prescription drugs, and it just about stopped my heart. There was a call to 911. My heartbeat became extraordinarily irregular and stayed that way for a while. And there I was, 32 years old, a new father, and thinking, okay, is my life over? Where do I go from here? And so I said, maybe this whole medical approach wasn't the thing for you. So I started looking at making my home a haven, making my home a place where my allergies would not be triggered. So I built a house, and the house had hardwood floors and tile floors. There was no carpeting. It had better insulation, so the heating didn't have to come on as much in the winter, making all that dry air. It had central HEPA air filters and a central humidifier, so the air wasn't too dry. It had a central vacuum, so the exhaust from the vacuum cleaner was vented outside. I even put in a sauna in the master bath because I thought, maybe the heat and moisture from the sauna would be good. I stopped mowing my own grass. I hired a landscaping service, and instead of taking drugs, I just used nasal saline. And just by having that, 12 or so hours a day when I was at home, when my sinuses got rest, in no time at all, I was feeling a lot better and stopped using medication. So this is just an example of your home can be a dangerous place, or your home can be your safe spot. And we want our homes to be our safe spot. And sometimes, Ann and I were living in California, and sometimes it wasn't safe to be outdoors. This wasn't because of COVID. I don't know if you can see how unclean the air was that day, but we were living in a place where the fires brought in the smoke and trapped it, and we had to wear N95 masks, not because of the pandemic as much as because for weeks on end, the outdoor air wasn't breathable, and therefore, again, we had to do things to keep the indoor air breathable. So Centers for Disease Control says that our homes are dangerous places on average, in terms of where poisonings happen. Uh, More than 90% of the calls to poison control centers are because of possible poisonings that happen at home. And a lot of these are in young children who get under the kitchen sink or into the laundry closet or somewhere else, and they're ingesting or pouring under their skin or getting into their eyes a cleaning product. So very, very common problem. Every 13 seconds. This is somewhat old data, but I bet it's about the same. So bad air, I mean, often indoor air quality is worse than outdoor air quality. And so that's leading to a lot of lung irritation. About 20 million Americans have asthma. It's very common in school-aged children, and it has been a growing problem for many years. And again, the household cleaners and appliances can give off fumes. A lot of people have gas stoves. We've now got an induction cooktop. So just getting those gas fumes out, and if you have an extractor fan above your stove, you ought to be using it, because I've done the test. I have an air quality monitor in the kitchen. You can really see the difference when you use the extractor fan and at one of the higher rates usually versus if you don't use it. So there was this quote. We're conducting a vast toxologic experiment in our society in which our children and our children's children are the experimental subjects. This is the concern. We're exposing our children to a lot of synthetic chemistry that hasn't been on the market long. There's thousands of new compounds that are coming onto the market every year. With not necessarily the kind of long-term and extensive testing that would show that they're safe. And it's a real concern. So, you don't have to be talking about some exotic cleaning product either. I mean, most of us have heard of bleach, right? Bleach is around. If you read the label, which many people don't do, the label will be pretty honest about a product like bleach. It'll tell you it's a respiratory irritant, that it can make existing medical conditions worse, and that if you combine it with other cleaning products, it can be extraordinarily toxic. So again, this is in terms of calls to poison control centers, very common for cleaning staff. I know a researcher who was studying mainly women who were home cleaners, because that's largely what that business is, and also studying respiratory problems in janitors, very common, but also a real problem in our children. Now, every so often a new product comes out, and that creates a new opportunity for poisonings. Laundry detergent pods were launched in 2012, and this is a graph out just through 2013 of exposure calls in children younger than 6 years old, so 0 to 5. Poison Control Center calls per year for exposure to laundry detergent pods. These things looked like food or like candy. They're bright colors. Again, people often keep them under the sink, someplace where a kid could get a hold of it, or the parent just turns their back for 10 seconds and the kid scoots across the floor and bites into one of these things. So you can see very quickly after they were launched in 2012, the calls to the poison control centers rose to about 800 to 1,000 a month, just for that one new product introduction. And some of the exposures were not serious, but a number of them were. Some of these children were hospitalized in this period. I know at least one child died from exposure to a laundry detergent pod. And this was the first company. I worked for this company at one time. And I actually know the guy, or did know the guy who was in charge of this product for a while. A good guy, and they realized that this was not a good thing, that children were getting poisoned, and they changed the packaging and put new warnings. And even I remember there were some warnings in television commercials. But even after those changes, the poisonings still were appearing. I just pulled this up from August 2020. The Association of Poison Control Centers in 2020 said the top exposure leading to these calls to the poison control centers, liquid laundry detergent packets. So still in 2020. And in fact, here's the data through August 22nd of this year. And you see it's about 10,000 cases a year in children under the age of 5. Okay, so this is real, and it's a concern. This is my little public service announcement. I would encourage everybody, have this phone number programmed into your phone, because if you ever need to call a poison control center, you don't want to be searching for the number. So go ahead and put it in your address book. And if something happens, you'll be ready. Take a picture of this. Okay. So now a little bit to that philosophy question. And this is really, I think, my most important slide in this deck. Some years ago, I was doing some reading in philosophy and was introduced to a philosopher named Martin Buber. And Buber tried to take complicated ideas and break them down into the simplest possible language. And so in terms of interactions between two entities, whether it was two people or a person and a tree, he described one option is it. It's transactional, so you might be going through a checkout line and the cashier tells you how much money you owe, and you take out your wallet and you hand the money. You don't say anything, you don't make eye contact. It's just a transaction. And the other way is thou, where you are expressing a connection to the other person. So again, in that checkout line, you might engage in conversation and say thank you and treat it more like a warm interaction. Well, you can have both of these approaches in product development. So I never, well, at Shaklee I did, but before, the other companies I was at sometimes had a cleaning product area. That wasn't my responsibility. I was on the nutrition and healthcare side. But my wife had her own company that did product and process development for some of those companies in Europe. And she and I have compared stories. And there really is an it side to product development for cleaning products. So you could imagine if when a product is being developed, there's a brief. There's a set of instructions that goes out to the developers, whether they're inside the company or outside the company. So let's say it's a hard surface cleaner that's being developed. So the brief says, well, you need to get this hard surface clean. And in an it could say, you can use whatever ingredient is legal, right up to the maximum amount that it can legally be used. Okay? We're going to downplay any safety concerns, and I'll tell you about that when I get to advertising a little bit more. We'll put on whatever statements the law requires, but we're not going to raise safety concerns. We're going to focus on effectiveness. We're going to focus on cleaning. We want you also to create lots of line extensions. So yeah, this product needs to clean window glass. We want you to make another product that'll clean the oven. and another product that'll clean the floor, the tile, and another product that, and so that people, they'll buy the brand and then they'll fill up their cabinet with all these different bottles. We want this to be something that we can sell in dilute form, because then they'll have to come back, every few weeks and get another bottle. That's really important, because that's where the money is. We need them coming back all the time to buy another bottle. And it's really important that you find a way to test this, that we get an advertising win. So let's say it's laundry detergent, and overall it's not great, but it gets out ketchup stains really well. Well, that's what we're going to do our commercial on, ketchup stains. It needs to beat the other guy for something, so that we've got a story. Now, in the really bad scenario where it doesn't beat the other guy, it's got to be equal. And you know what they say when they can't prove that they can beat the other guy? They say this. Doesn't this sound better? No product is better than ours. In other words, and our product isn't better than anybody else's. But the better way to say that, if you're in sales, no product is better than ours. That means they failed to show superiority. That's exactly what that means. Now, downplaying the safety concerns. If you read the label, the fine print on the label, it might tell you a lot of things about how you need to wear gloves, and you need to open the windows, and you need to turn on the fans, and keep away from children and pets, and don't spray it in your eyes, and all that sort of stuff. But the television commercial is going to show kids in the room. It's going to show the pets in the room. You're going to know it's a family with children and pets. You're not going to see the user turning on fans, putting on gloves, opening windows. You're not going to see any of that, because all they want to talk about is how great this works and maybe how nice it smells, right? So all of the imaging is going to just tell you just how wonderful and safe this is. They don't have to say it out loud. They don't have to say it out loud. They just convey it with the messages while they tell you that nothing works better. Okay, so that's the it. They're trying to lever their way into your wallet as many times as possible and as frequently as possible. Okay, the other way, the thou way, you start not with the product, you start with the person. We got this person, they need a hard surface cleaner. We want them to be able to do that safely. We may make it affordable. Part of that is it's going to be concentrated, so that then they're diluting it, and the bottle's going to last a long time. When you're formulating it, we don't want you to use ingredients with a poor margin of safety, right? We don't want you to use ingredients that only work at a high pH or a very low pH, because then you can get burns, right? That would be bad. If you're using detergents, we want them to be readily biodegradable. That's better for the environment, right? It's better if they have a septic system. That's better, right? So readily biodegradable. That means that once it's done the job, and it's you flushed it into your septic system or down in the sewer, it's going to break down in a matter at most of a few weeks, and into something that's harmless. Okay, readily biodegradable, important. Fragrance-free options for people that fragrances are a problem, and radically minimize packaging waste. That's partly where make it in a concentrated form. So just night and day difference, and believe me, this is out there. This is absolutely out there, and most of the larger companies, they're going to be on the it side, because it's all about, you've got to have that television commercial or now web advertising, that just beats the other guy. I could tell you stories. I can tell you stories. So Shaklee has a very long history in the cleaning products side, based on this idea of living in harmony with nature. I pulled this down. It's just a screen grab from the U.S. Shaklee site, a list of environmental achievements. It's really worth taking a look at that because it's a long list, uh, you know, uh, including climate neutrality and research efforts that the company has supported, and reforestation and many other things. But going back to the 1960s, when Shaklee introduced Basic H, it was one of the first non-toxic biodegradable cleaners. And then in the 1970s, biodegradable laundry detergents without phosphates, nitrates, or borates. If you haven't seen, I think it's on Shaklee TV, the video about Lake Kinesis.
Yes.
A lake that was being destroyed by the phosphate detergents in use at the time. And there was an effort to get all the people living around that lake to switch to Shaklee products, which were phosphate free, and save that lake. It's a wonderful story. Anyway, again, it's deep in Shaklee's DNA, to take this sort of approach and really create products that are both safer for the users, but also safer for the environment. And so that's again, the philosophy. I think I've made most of these points already. So there are ingredients that they won't use, either because they can't be sustainably sourced, or they're simply dangerous, in terms of contact or the fumes. I mentioned safer septic systems. One of my favorite stories was a longtime Shaklee user who was selling a house that had a septic tank, and there was a requirement that the septic tank be inspected before, as part of the selling process. So man comes along, to do the inspection, and I'm sure he's counting the dollars, oh boy, it's a 20-year-old septic system. I'm going to get to rip this out and put in a new one. And it was like new. And the homeowner said, "Would you like to know what I do?" Because she was thinking, oh, it's, I've been using all these safe products. And he says, "Lady, I don't want anybody to know what you do." Right. Just so that's important. And then no animal testing. They're selecting from a set of ingredients where that's no longer necessary, because whatever testing was once required by the government has long been done and archived. So they're not going to go there. I do want to say, safe doesn't mean absolutely safe. So if you're using a hard surface cleaner, don't spray it in your eyes. Use it according to the label. And the one product in the cleaning product line which is genuinely more tricky to handle is Basic G, because it's germicidal. It will destroy viruses like COVID-19. You spray it onto the hard surface. You have to leave it about 5 minutes. You wash it off with water, and it's done. You have sanitized that surface. But so if you look at what Shaklee says about that, yes, you need to wear gloves. You should wear protective eyewear, protective clothing, etc. So when it is necessary, because of what the product needs to do, that you have to take extra precautions, then obviously, again, read the label, follow the instructions. But many of the products in this line are just incredibly safe and non-irritating. One of my personal favorite stories, when we were living in California, we had some contractors around. The windows had gotten very dirty. At the time, Anne was visiting family in England, and I said, well, I need something to do. I'm going to clean all these windows. And so it's 2 drops of Basic H2 and 16 fluid ounces of water, and I go around and spray. And I think, I'm not somebody who normally does this sort of thing. I'm not that inclined, especially when nobody's looking over my shoulder and telling me to do it. But I said, this is so easy. This is just so easy. And I was having fun. And I did all the windows. And I was kind of sad that there were no more windows to do. So I did the car, And so I get done and I sent an email to Anne and I said, I just cleaned every window in the house and it was great. And she called me from England because she figured my email account had been hacked. You know, this was not her husband talking, no husband that she recognized anyway. But it really was amazing, you know, how effortless it was, you know, to get the windows clean with 2 drops of this cleaning hard surface cleaner in 16 fluid ounces of water. It was great. Um, and so in terms of, you know, what we're exposing our children to, this is Dr. Daggy many years ago, holding my daughter. And then the picture on the right, that's my grandson with the same daughter, just a couple of weeks ago. And we really, you know, we want to give our kids, you know, a great start in life. And I think part of it is really being mindful of, you know, the hazards that are in the house and avoiding the hazards when you can, and yet get the clothes clean, get the hard surfaces clean, you know, also, you know, watching out for, you know, you know, dirt, germs, you know, where these things are an issue. So this is how we can go about it. So let me just stop sharing. And you know, Bob, I know your mother, Kay, started her business back in the day, Basic H as the core focus, right?
Well, absolutely. In fact, I can take credit for the little tiny first germ of our business. I was back from college at age 20, temporarily, and my mother thought she would put me to good use, and so she volunteered me to go help a friend get through a math course so she could become a school librarian. So I would go over once a week and do algebra with Nora. And one day she said, Bob, come into the kitchen. I got this amazing organic cleaner that I think your mother would be interested in. So put your hand out. So my hand out, and she put some butter, I think it was butter, in my hand, and then put 1 drop of this magic blue stuff and had me rub it around. And she turned the cold water on him. I put my hands into the cold water and all the oil came off. I said, that is really amazing. So I took this blue bottle with a red cap and took it over to my mother and told her that Nora said this will get grease out of anything. And so my mother tried it on my pair of pants that my brother had used as a napkin and greasy handprints on it and put a little Basic H on it along with whatever else she was using, and all the oil came out. And so that actually is how our business started. My mother was just fascinated. So she started to go to Shaklee meetings, and then very soon the big impetus was the health reversal in poor health that she had. But back in 1970, they, as you were on the scene then, along with me, you recall that the medical community was still saying that anyone who says diet has anything to do with your health is a quack, run away. Now, within 7 or 8 years, that had shifted dramatically. So my mother, being a smart person, said, well, I know what the nutritional supplements have done for me, but most people don't. And so she would just get them to try Basic H. It was so astonishing that she said, well, the rest of the products are just as good. All right. Well, then they had the ears to hear. But yeah, I mean, there's so many wonderful stories. And yeah, we had a couple in New Hampshire. It was famous. We had a famous little story with a little hand-drawn thing where of a little frog, a little pond, and they ran all the gray water, not the toilet water, but the gray water, the house out into a little pond, and used only Shaklee products. Well, the tadpoles were there, and the rushes grew, and everything was fine, and the water was beautiful. And yeah, I understand that Basic H breaks down in running water, breaks down extraordinarily quickly.
Yeah, we did the same in California. We had a gray water system from our clothes washer
Yep.
that watered the fruit trees.
That's what I call it, lemon trees, right?
They were lemon trees, right? Yeah, Meyer lemons, and
How I
they
remember.
were fine. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So it's a nice thing because you can do that if you got these surfactants that will break down readily. In fact, they help the water penetrate. We had heavy clay. The surfactants help the water get in. Shaklee actually funded a lot of research on that back in the 1970s and 80s. The products are no longer, registered for, agricultural use, although they are still used that way, but they're not officially registered with the various states for that. But in a gray water system, it makes perfect sense to use something like that it not only is not harmful, it will help the water penetrate.
And it's, and from, going back to the health issue, I find that in my town, there's a lot of highly conscious people. And I'm surprised if I happen to, I don't generally go around and open people's kitchen cabinets, but occasionally something happens and I see what's down there and I go, I don't get it. There's all these highly toxic cleaners and they go, gosh, I never actually even thought of that.
Yeah.
This is not something people think of, but when I was back doing more demonstrations, I would kind of tongue in cheek say, well, what are you cleaning with? And they'd grab a 409. And I said, would you consider taking the cap off and taking a swig of that? And they go, what are you, nuts? And I go, well, I hate to be impertinent, but what are you, nuts? How do you use that? Do you ever spray it up around head level on your woodwork? The equivalent of our CDC, I think, did a study in Canada, long-term study, showing that women who didn't work outside the home had significantly higher cancer rates. And I think one of the posited mechanisms was a higher exposure to toxic chemicals. So, to kind of wrap things up, it is astonishing to me that we don't have more regulation, but we don't. And so it's crucially important that we understand that we really can damage our health. We can keep going on stories and story upon story, but you can really severely damage your health with cleaners. In fact, very likely the cause of my cousin's death, he worked in chicken processing plants, and he would use stuff to clean out the drains. And I'm pretty sure that's what killed him. It burned his lungs out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's, it's not vastly different though, because you can get a drain cleaner, a commercial drain cleaner, or a commercial oven cleaner, or a commercial tile cleaner that's probably every bit as toxic as the stuff that my cousin was using. So this is a no kidding kind of thing. And it isn't as if you have to compromise, as my mother would famously say, or these cost less, work better, and don't pollute. What part of cost less, work better, and don't pollute is a problem? And people say, well, nothing. Well, that's why my mother sold gallons and gallons and gallons of Basic H, which was the gateway for them to discover the other marvelous non-toxic products, including our personal care products, and then the nutritional products that you worked on so diligently for us. We really can, by reducing the toxic load and increasing the compounds that actually help our cells rebuild themselves properly and duplicate properly, we can live very effectively and very well long past the time that of old age. I mean, I'm solidly in the old age category, having hit the elevated status of 72. I don't know what 72 is supposed to feel like. I'm pretty sure I don't feel like what I thought 72 would feel like.
Yeah, I think there are many 72-year-olds who would gladly trade places with you in terms of your health. So yeah, you're right. This one is, for me, is kind of a no-brainer. Of having safer options with no compromise.
Yeah, less expensive, and particularly Basic H. I mean, when I sold the Basic H to a 22-year-old, I said, I know you're a pretty clean guy, Joel, but you're going to have a heck of a time getting rid of this bottle in less than 2 or 3 years. They paid $10 for it, $11 for it. When you look at all of the diluted cleaners that anyone who cleans diligently there, well, I hope so,
Yeah.
lives across the wall, the wall there. You know, it's just amazing. You can save hundreds and hundreds of dollars and clean more effectively. And I mention to people, and they agree after they try them. Once you've used a Shaklee cleaner, you'll never use another cleaner. Everything just seems so smelly or ineffective or whatever. So there is no compromise.
Well, on that happy note, again, the philosophy carries over to the other products, but this is just an excellent category to illustrate the different approaches that different companies take, and they're all legal. A company that uses the harsh ingredients, if you call them up, they will say we are complying with every law, and I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are, but it's just it's a different way of looking at what the process should be.
Right.
So,
well, Bruce, as always, it's a complete and utter pleasure to work with you. I'm so glad we continue to be able to do that, and we'll be back with Dr. Bruce Daggy.
Okay, thanks much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.